Have you ever noticed how there are people who, when you leave a conversation with them, you feel completely empty? Not tired of work, not tired of physical exertion, empty, as if someone had opened a faucet inside you and let it all flow. And most disturbingly, you smiled the entire conversation. The Bible is not naive about this. Proverbs 13:20 says, "He that walks with wise ones becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm." It does not say that it may suffer. He does not say that he can suffer. He says he will suffer damage. It is a certainty. You've been taught that loving your neighbor means being available to everyone at any time, at any cost. That saying no is selfish. That moving away is coldness. But this interpretation has destroyed good people, people with genuine hearts, people who give their all and keep nothing. Jesus himself, the greatest example of love that exists, was not available to everyone all the time. He withdrew. He chose his circles. He kept silent in front of those who did not deserve an answer. And it wasn't a lack of love. It was wisdom. Because there is a huge difference between serving out of love and being consumed out of obligation. In this video, you'll understand who are the people who drain your energy without you realizing it, why you keep making room for them even though you're suffering, and how God's own word gives you permission and even guidance to protect what's inside you. Stay until the end. Because what I'm going to show you here can change the way you see your relationships forever. The open faucet. Why you feel you people there is a type of tiredness that sleep does not cure. You lie down, close your eyes, spend all night in bed, and wake up with that same heavy feeling in your chest. It is not the body that is exhausted. It is something deeper. It is your soul that has been drained. And most people never stop to ask, where does this fatigue come from? The answer most of the time has a name, surname, and sends you a message every day. The Bible speaks in Proverbs 4:23 of something that should be taught from an early age. Guard your heart above all that is guarded, for out of it are the sources of life. Note the seriousness of this instruction. It doesn't say to guard your heart sometimes. It doesn't say to protect you when you can. It says more than everything that is kept. In other words, nothing in your life should be more protected than what lives inside you. But what do most people do? The exact opposite of that. It opens the heart to anyone who comes with a sad story. It offers time, attention, emotional energy, advice, presence, without any criteria, and then he wonders why he is destroyed inside. The problem is not having a good heart. The problem is not having a gate. Think of a garden. If you plant seeds, water, take care of, fertilize the soil, but leave the fence open for any animals to enter, what happens? Before long, what you have cultivated with so much effort is trampled underfoot, uprooted, destroyed. Not because you didn't take care of it, but because you didn't protect it. Its interior works in the same way. When you're always emotionally available to everyone, answering calls that weigh you down, listening to dramas that repeat endlessly, solving problems that the other person doesn't even want to solve, you're leaving the gate open. And not every visitor comes with good intentions. Some don't even know they're destroying you. They simply arrive, take what they need, and leave lighter as you get heavier. Psychology calls this phenomenon emotional transference. The person unloads their weight on you, and you, without realizing it, carry what is not yours. Interestingly, the Bible described this principle long before any psychological theory existed. In Luke 8, when the woman touched the edge of Jesus' garment in the midst of the crowd, he immediately noticed and said, "Someone touched me, because I perceived that power came out of me." Even Jesus, the Son of God, felt when something came out of him. I felt the expense. I felt the surrender, and he was aware of it. What about you? Do you notice when the power leaves you? When does your peace drain away? When does your joy go away after certain conversations? Most people don't realize it, because she was taught to ignore these signs. She was conditioned to think that feeling tired of someone is cruelty, that realizing that a relationship exhausts you is ingratitude, that needing distance is weakness. But it is not. It is discernment. And discernment is a gift that God's own word instructs you to exercise. 1 Corinthians 15:33 is straightforward. Do not be deceived. Bad conversation corrupts good morals. It is not a metaphor. It's a warning. What you hear repeatedly, what you live with constantly, shapes who you are. It shapes what you feel. It shapes what you believe is possible for your life. And when you spend hours soaking up negativity, endless complaining, pessimism, envy disguised as worry, you don't come out unscathed. You come out different, a little heavier, a little more closed, a little further away from who God created you to be. The tiredness you feel is not your weakness. It is a sign. It's your inner self telling you that something needs to change, that some door needs to be closed, that some space needs to be recovered. The question is, will you hear this signal, or will you continue to call selfishness what in fact is survival? Sucking people. How to recognize those who only arrive when they need it. There's a profile of a person you probably know very well, even if you've never named them. She doesn't show up on her good days. It's not when you need support. It does not celebrate its achievements with genuineness. But when her life goes awry, and it always does, you're the first call. And you answer. Always. Not because he doesn't notice the pattern, but because he was taught that this is love. That being available in the other's difficulty is what defines a good friend, a good family member, a good person. But the Bible makes an important distinction that many people ignore. At Proverbs 19:4, it is written, "Wealth attracts many friends, but the poor are forsaken even by their own friend." It's a crude observation about human nature. There are people who approach you for what you offer, not for what you are. And when you stop offering, they just disappear. This is not theory. That's what you've already experienced. Think of that friend who only comes to you when he is in crisis. When the relationship is over, when you lose your job, when you fight with your family, you are the safe haven. But when his life stabilizes, when everything is fine, you disappear from his radar. Until the next storm. Or think about that person who always has a bigger problem than yours. You start talking about something that's weighing you down, and in less than 2 minutes the conversation has turned to it. Your problems, your pains, your needs. And you, who needed to be heard, end up being the listener once again. This behavior has a name. It is emotional vampirism. And it doesn't have to be intentional to be devastating. Jesus was very wise in the way he dealt with crowds and with individual people. He healed, taught, served, but he also knew how to distinguish those who sought transformation from those who sought only benefit. In John 6, after multiplying the loaves, many followed him. And he said directly, "Truly I say to you, you are looking for me, not because you have seen signs, but because you have eaten of the bread and have been satisfied." He named the standard, without beating around the bush. You have the right and the responsibility to do the same in your life, to observe who is close to you for who you are and who is close for what you can give. Because to confuse the two things is to give up your peace in the name of a relationship that was never real. Ecclesiastes 4:10 talks about true fellowship. For if they fall, one lifts up the other. But woe to him who is alone, for if he falls, there will be no one to lift him up. The principle here is reciprocity. The idea that one lifts the other, not that one always rises while the other always falls. When a relationship is systematically one-sided, you always giving, always listening, always resolving, always giving in, it is no longer a relationship. It became a service contract that no one asked you for permission to sign. Acknowledging this is not judgment, it is discernment. And discernment, as we have seen, is a biblical instruction, not a spiritual option. The clearest sign that someone only drains you is simple. Notice how you feel after each interaction. Lighter or heavier, with more hope or with more anguish, with more energy or completely depleted. Your inner self knows the answer. The question is whether you're willing to listen to it and act on it. The mistake of calling the limit sin, this is perhaps the greatest deception that exists within Christian communities. The idea that setting limits is a lack of love, that saying no is pride, that moving away from someone who hurts you is abandonment, that taking care of oneself is selfishness disguised as spirituality, and that deception has quietly destroyed people who have genuine hearts, real faith, and goodwill to spare. The truth is that limit is not a sin, limit is wisdom. Nehemiah is one of the greatest biblical examples of purposeful leadership. As he rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem, a God-given mission, he faced adversaries who tried everything to stop him. Sanballat and Tobias sent messages asking him to stop work and go talk, that he would come down from the wall to negotiate. And Nehemiah's response is one of the most powerful in the entire Bible. "I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Why should I cease the work and leave it to come to you?" Nehemiah 6:3. He was not rude. It was not cruel. He did not curse or attack. I simply said, "I can't go down. I have something bigger to protect than this conversation. You have a work in your life. It could be your mental health, your family, your calling, your peace. And there are people who, consciously or not, want you to come down from the wall. They want you to abandon what you are building to manage their dramas. And when you don't go down, they call you cold, proud, changed. But Nehemiah did not come down, and the wall was rebuilt. Jesus also set limits naturally. In Mark 1:35, just after an intense day of healing and teaching, with crowds pressing on him on all sides, he got up early in the morning, rising long before the day, and went out and went to a lonely place, and there he prayed. He withdrew, deliberately, alone. When the disciples found him and said that everyone was looking for him, he did not rush back to meet the demand. He said, "Let us go to the neighboring villages so that I may preach there also." He was clear about his purpose, and he didn't let pressure from people redefine his calling. This is a limit. This is discernment. And this is at the heart of the gospel. The big problem is that many people have been taught a distorted version of Christian love, the version that confuses martyrdom with service, which teaches that the more you suffer for the other, the more you love them. To say no is to close one's heart, but Galatians 6:2 says to bear one another's burdens. And in verse 5 of the same chapter it says each one will bear his own load. There is a healthy tension here. You help, but each one is also responsible for what is theirs. You have not been called to carry what belongs to the other indefinitely. Setting boundaries isn't saying, I don't care about you. It's saying, I care about myself too. And a person who doesn't take care of himself can't take care of anyone else for long. Jesus himself knew this. If you're destroyed inside by trying to save everyone around, you're not being spiritual anymore. You are being reckless with the temple that God has placed in your care, which is yourself. The silence that saves, when to stop explaining, is the most powerful act. There is a compulsion that many people carry without realizing it, the need to explain themselves, to justify each decision, to convince the other that you are right, to prove that yours doesn't have a valid enough reason to be respected. And as long as you live in that compulsion, you're never going to have peace. Jesus did not explain himself to those who were not willing to listen. When the Pharisees tempted traps with trick questions, he often answered with another question, or simply remained silent. In Matthew 27:14, before Pilate, who insisted on questioning him, it is written, "But Jesus did not answer him a word, so that the governor was greatly astonished." He felt no need to defend himself before those who had already decided what he wanted to believe. And that silence was more powerful than any argument could have been. There are people in your life who don't want to understand. They want to win. They want you to justify yourself so that they can rebut, manipulate, twist your words. And every time you get into that game, you lose. Not because you're wrong, but because the field has been set against you. Proverbs 26:4 says, "Do not answer a fool according to his stupidity, lest you become like him." It is a direct instruction. There are conversations that you shouldn't get into. There are people for whom your explanation won't change anything, because they don't want to understand. They want to control. And when you insist on explaining yourself to these people, you're not being honest. You are being manipulated. Conscious silence, not the silence of anger or flight, but the silence of wisdom, is one of the most powerful tools there is. It unbalances those who depend on their reaction to feel in control. It reveals who is using you as an emotional stage. It gives you back sovereignty over your own narrative. Ecclesiastes 3:7 says that there is a time to be silent and a time to speak, and knowing how to distinguish the two is maturity, not cowardice. Many people confuse silence with passivity, but the silence that comes from consciousness, the silence of those who have chosen not to feed chaos, is an act of force. When you stop explaining yourself to those who don't deserve explanation, something changes. First, inside you, you begin to feel a strange lightness, a peace that seemed impossible in that relationship. Then, around, the person realizes that they no longer have control over you, that the buttons that worked before stopped working, and here come the reactions. The accusation that you've changed, the pressure to go back to who he was, the drama of those who lost their favorite audience. But that's not a sign that you've made a mistake. It's a sign that you've grown up. James 1:19 sums it up accurately. Let every man be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Ready to listen with discernment, slow to speak wisely, slow to anger mature. Your silence doesn't need a caption. Whoever respects you will understand. Those who don't understand will reveal, with their own reaction, that they were never on your side. Choosing who you hang out with, the decision that changes everything. If there is one decision that transforms the quality of your life faster than any other, it is this: consciously choosing who you share your time and energy with. It is not an easy decision, but it is one of the most biblical that exists. David, before he was king, lived for years surrounded by the wrong people, and that almost destroyed him. But in Psalm 1:1, he writes with the clarity of one who has learned in pain, "Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the way of sinners, nor sit in the seat of the scornful." Notice the progression. Walk, stop, sit. This is exactly how the wrong influences work. First, you just pass by. Then you start attending. Then you settle in. And when she realizes what seemed like just a company has become her environment, her mentality, her identity, you become what you frequent. This is not cliche. It is spiritual and psychological law at the same time. Paul forcefully confirms this principle at 1 Corinthians 15:33. Do not be deceived. Bad conversation corrupts good morals. And he uses the word deceive on purpose because it's easy to be wrong. It's easy to think that you're strong enough to absorb negativity without being affected. It's easy to believe you're helping when in fact you're sinking with it. The truth is that no one gets out of toxic environments unscathed long enough. You can hold out for a while. But the constant exposure leaves marks. It changes the way you think, the way you speak, what you consider normal. Choosing who you hang out with is not arrogance. It is responsibility for your calling. Jesus chose 12. Within the 12, there was a circle of the three closest ones, Peter, James, and John. And even within this smaller circle, there was an even more intimate one. He didn't distribute the same depth of relationship to everyone. It had layers, he had criteria, he had discernment, and he loved them all. But he did not expose himself in the same way to everyone. This is a model, not of exclusion, but of relational wisdom. You have the right to have layers as well. To have people close to you who edify you, challenge you, point you to God, and keep others at a respectful distance, without hatred, without judgment, but with clarity. Proverbs 27:17 says, "Iron sharpens with iron, so a man to his friend." The right people point you out. They challenge you. They make you sharper. The wrong people dull you. They tire you out. They make you more and more opaque, dull, directionless. Look around now. Who in your life sharpens you? Who makes you want to be better? Seek more, grow, trust God with more faith. These people are treasures. Protect that proximity. And who dulls you? Who after each conversation makes you more confused, heavier, more distant from who you are? That clarity can be painful, but it is necessary. Changing your circle does not mean abandoning people. It means honoring what God has placed within you, preserving space for it to flourish without being trampled on by those who don't know the value of what you carry. The peace that goes beyond. What comes about when you stop trying to please everyone? There's a peace described in the Bible that makes no sense to human logic. Paul writes in Philippians 4:7 about the peace of God, which passeth all understanding. A peace that does not depend on everything being resolved, that it doesn't depend on everyone being happy with you, that does not depend on approval, validation, absence of conflict. That peace exists. And she's on the other side of a decision that most people are afraid to make, the decision to stop trying to please everyone. From an early age, you were conditioned to measure your worth by the thermometer of other people's approval. If everyone is happy with you, you're fine. If someone is disappointed, you collapse. If someone criticizes you, you spend days ruminating. If someone rejects you, you question yourself entirely. But this system is a trap, because you're never going to please everyone. Never. It doesn't matter how much you give yourself, how much you give in, how much you reduce yourself. There will always be someone dissatisfied. And if your peace depends on the satisfaction of that someone, you will never have peace. Paul understood this deeply. In Galatians 1:10, he writes, "For do I seek the favor of men or the favor of God, or do I try to please men? If I still pleased men, I would not be a servant of Christ." It's a choice. And it's a choice you need to consciously make every day. When you live to please people, you lose yourself. You shape your speech, your behavior, your decisions based on what others will think. And in the process, you let go, piece by piece, who you really are. Until one day you look in the mirror and no longer recognize the person who is there. This is not an exaggeration. This is what happens to those who have never learned to live for an audience of one God. When you stop trying to please everyone, some people will walk away. And that will hurt, because you've been taught that losing people is failure. That being rejected means that you have made a mistake. But sometimes the people who walk away when you start growing up are exactly the proof that you were giving up the wrong space. Jesus said in John 15:18-19, "If the world hates you, know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love what was its own. But because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hates you." Being rejected by those who wanted you available, controllable, and predictable is not punishment. It is confirmation that you are becoming free. The peace that is born when you stop living for the approval of others is neither cold nor empty. It is profound. It is the peace of those who know who they are, of those who know who they live for, of those who no longer need applause to know that they are on the right track. It's the peace of waking up in the morning and not having a tight stomach thinking about what that person will think. To answer or not answer without guilt. To say no with a clear conscience. To choose your silence and not feel obliged to fill it with explanations. That peace is available to you now. But it requires a break from the habit of seeking validation where God never intended you to. Because in the end, the only approval that matters has already been given. It has already been paid. It has already been secured on the cross. And when you really understand this, from the inside out, the opinion of others starts to weigh less and less, and peace begins to take up residence in you. Not because everything is perfect, but because you have finally stopped exchanging what is eternal for what is temporary. Write in the comments, "I choose my peace." If this message has touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. See you in the next video.